Why did it get quiet?
Got official.
Huh?
We got official.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, I'm here. Okay, go.
How are you doing? I try to be. I'm not, the 15 minutes that my dad does, 15 minutes early, so. Have everybody we need here, right? Looking around, counting, making sure.
We made it to the big time, lady.
Well, good afternoon, and welcome to all of our members of the State Board of Finance and to the guests that are present here in the room. Excited that we have everybody here, and it looks, I'm just double checking math, that's usually not my assignment, but seeing that we have a quorum of at least 7, I'll call this meeting to order of the State Board of Finance. This group serves obviously a very crucial role in overseeing the investments for the state of Arkansas. Billions of dollars are managed through the state treasury. Treasurer Lowry was elected to take on this responsibility, and one of the ways he's going to accomplish this is by ensuring his staff adhere to the guidelines in the investment policy for safety and return on investment for these funds. And we owe this duty to the citizens to act wisely in our actions. As governor, it's my desire to designate the Secretary of the Department of Finance and Administration, Larry Walther, to serve as chairman of the board as needed or in my absence. If there's a motion to that effect, I would recognize it now.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good, I was worried, Larry. I was worried that you might not get approved.
She knows me.
And so with that, I'm gonna very happily turn this meeting over to you instead of me, so.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your confidence in this board, great board, and me to lead it as we go forward. It's an interesting board. We added, we had the financial responsibility, then we added the employment benefit department about 2 years ago, a year and a half, and we didn't all sign on for that, but we got it, and it has required a significant amount of work, especially early on because of the issues that were going on there. And so I want to commend this group for the work they did in shepherding EBD and the work that Jake Lee did in that same period of time. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of hard work at the same time. Okay, let me see. I guess the next thing on the agenda would be the adoption of the minutes from the October the 31st, 2022 and November the 9th of 2022. Those meeting minutes were distributed to you via email. And I would ask first, are there any corrections, additions, or changes that anyone would propose? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for those.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to the Employee Benefit Division. The first item on the agenda for the Employee Benefit Division is the selection of the Executive Director position. I have asked Secretary Wood if he would introduce his recommendation for the Executive Director of EBD.
Sit down, ladies.
We don't charge
Good
extra
afternoon.
for seats.
Good afternoon. On the board, thank you guys for having me, Chair. And I want to echo Secretary your comments about thanking former Executive Director Jake Lee for the work he did in getting EBD to where it is. And so we couldn't get here without his work, his leadership. So again, thank you, Director Lee. With that, we would like to nominate Mr. Grant Wallace to become the Executive Director for the Benefit Division. With his prior work experience both in the state and the federal, his work in healthcare, his familiarity with this board, and working with EBD through the years and some of Arkansas's issues. We're looking forward to him joining the team, working with you, the board, our legislators, so we can advance access to healthcare as well as continue to make sure we have richer benefits for our employees and our members, about 158,000. So with that, again, recently Grant Wallace to be our next executive director for the Benefits Division.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
have his resume, if you guys would like to have that.
I think it's been,
Has
it
the
been
board seen
distributed?
that?
I thought it had been distributed. Grant, where are you?
Mr. Wallace?
Stand up. Let
Stand
everyone know
up
who
there.
you are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Now I would entertain a motion for the approval of Grant Wallace as the new Executive Director of EBD. Do I have
Mr.
such a
Chairman,
motion?
Mr. Chairman, Governor, Mr. Secretary, it would be my honor to accept the Secretary's recommendation for the Executive Director of EBD, nominate Grant Wallace, my former Chief Deputy Treasurer, for that position.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you. That went well, very well.
Could you come run the legislature since it goes so well?
Okay, let's move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is the formulary recommendation report. And to present that report, I'm going to recognize Mr. Jake Lee, somewhere in the room.
Over here, can I sit here?
Yes, you may.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the two items that we have to go over on today's agenda are items that most of you have seen before. The first is the quarterly report for the 3 months ending December 31st of 2022. That's in your packets. The second are changes to our formulary management, which I think we've shown before the Board of Finance before as well. In Arkansas, for those of you who haven't been at a board meeting before, we have under law the authority to approve changes to the drugs we cover and don't cover. It's somewhat unusual the state does that. So we'll be going over that at the appropriate time. Before I go on, I also want to say I've worked with Grant for years and I think he's a great guy and I think it's an amazing selection. So I think I'm really looking forward to helping him get off on a good foot. On the quarterly report, I can go over some of the details if you'd like. If you'd like, we can also just open it up for any conversation or questions you might have.
Jake, is there anything in particular you want us to observe in this report?
Sure. If I can, flip to towards the back here, you have these two colorful charts. And this, I think, is a good place to look at how far we've come and where we're going. So, if you recall, when the Board of Finance took over, we had, this was a couple of years ago, we were being told that our reserves were going to go down to zero, that we were looking at some very, very lean times, and that we had an expectation of not being able to pay our bills with the conclusion of calendar 22. Since that time, and in large part because of the efforts of the Board of Finance, we've turned that around significantly. The report for the 3 months ending 2022, there's very, very positive growth for both the ASE and the PSE plans. Projections also going forward show some very, very strong surpluses in the future. So I'm very, very proud to say that we've done a really, I think as a state, a good job of righting the ship and setting it forward. I think the policies adopted by this board in particular in how we look at costs, how we look at expenses, and how we project those things out can really help us make smarter decisions in the long run. Just by way of comparison, I do have some of those figures that I showed you all 2 years ago, and they do show a whole lot of different numbers. And I showed these to the advisory commissions in advance of the meeting. If you'd like, we can go over the budget trackers. I think that this is all the small numbers. If anybody would like, or if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Classes for this part.
We're going for So, are we doing formulary?
Yeah.
We can do the formulary first. I'm sorry for all the shuffling of paper. The quarterly report, as you saw, or as you all know, has the budget tracker in it that shows where we thought we were going to be, where we ended up, and the differences. That's a very detailed document. We use that a lot. And then, of course, it shows the reporting going forward. This report will be presented to the ALC here, pending your approval.
Anyone have any questions? We're on the quarterly report right now, not the formulary.
I apologize, Bill.
Okay, may I have a motion to accept Mr. Blee's quarterly, his report?
I move to accept the report.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Any additional questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, let's go to the formulary now.
So the formulary report, as I mentioned earlier, this is a somewhat unusual process that we go through where we look at individual drugs that have come on the market or existing drugs that are already on the market and for which the research has changed. And we look at, okay, are we paying for those drugs? Are we covering them? And if so, do we need to change that decision? This is done through our partners over at the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences, the College of Pharmacy, EVRX. They make recommendations to us on a quarterly basis. Under the law, those recommendations come to the Board of Finance, and then they will move forward to the Arkansas Legislative Council. In the middle column there, you'll see a recommendation for what we'd like to do with each of the various different drugs. With two exceptions, we would recommend excluding those drugs, which is to say not covering them. Each one of those has a little code next to it saying why we want to exclude them. And on the first page, you can see why we might exclude them. We might exclude them, for example, that we don't think clinically speaking they work. We might exclude them because we think they're too expensive, or we might exclude them because there's already drugs on the market that we cover that do it better. The two examples are in there. I think there's one on each page. We can go over why that is. They're somewhat different drugs. The first is an ADHD drug. It's a patch. We approved that in part because it's effective. It is cost neutral with the alternatives which are already available. And we just think it's an appropriate thing to add. The second, on the second page, is a drug for cancer of the gallbladder. The second line drug, very effective. We don't think it'll be used very much, but the FDA had tests that have shown that it is a very effective drug, so we do want to go ahead and approve that.
Thank you. Anyone have a question? Hearing none, may I have a motion to accept the formulary report?
Motion.
Got a motion? Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and if I could just take a moment, we learned this morning that the pharmacy benefits manager contract that we've been working on for the better part of a year, I think all of you have known about this. We've reached a deal with a vendor. We can now speak about it publicly. This vendor is Navitus Health Solutions. They're out of Wisconsin. So with today's announcement, we will enter a 14-day protest period where any vendor who wants to protest that procurement can do so. If at the end of that 14-day period, we still have a contract in place, but protests don't succeed, we will be asking for another meeting of the Board of Finance to approve that contract.
So So if we have that, or when we have that, I would expect to do that by Zoom and be one item on the agenda, so that I'll give you as much notice as I can so you'll be prepared to be there. Thank you.
So question, does that replace EBRX, is that what you're saying?
No, sir. That would replace Med Impact.
Okay.
EBRX are what we're calling our clinical consultants.
Correct.
As you know, pharmacy is very complicated. I am not a pharmacy expert. We really need the expertise over at UMS to help us make these decisions, and we will continue to have a relationship.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Take care.
Navitas Health Solutions. Grant will be giving an update on that.
Grant will have it then. Now I'd like to recognize the treasurer, Mark Lowry, to present his treasury report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Governor, for being with us today. And I just want to tell you how much of an honor it is for me to be able to serve with you on this Board of Finance, especially to be able to bring you a great second quarter report, a result that, as you've probably already figured out, predates me actually being in office. So it gives me a unique opportunity to be able to thank former Treasurer Dennis Milligan for assembling a great finance team, and also to formally announce, of course I think most everyone knows this, that I was fortunate to be able to retain every one of the members of that finance team. So they're going to be giving the nuts and bolts of the report, but let me just give you some of the highlights. The results for the second quarter greatly outperformed our benchmark for the quarter. And this was accomplished by keeping to the standards that the Board of Finance has set. Governor Sanders already referenced the fact that the standards that we have are for safety, protecting the resources of the people of Arkansas, liquidity, and then return on investment. And even by adhering to all three of those, we were able to have an excellent first and second quarter, and we're going to hear a report that tells us that we're looking forward to a great third and fourth quarter as well. The other thing that we've been able to adhere to is a standard of care. The Treasurer of State and designated investment officers shall perform their duties in a manner consistent with the standard of prudent investor. And that has taken place in bringing about these great numbers that you're going to be hearing about. The investment program emphasizes stability and diversification. With this underlying strategic foundation, we can anticipate, and I asked the finance team to please be very conservative in telling me this, but they are anticipating that by the end of this fiscal year, we will have generated probably in excess of $220 million, which is an all-time record for record investment. And so rather than belabor giving you the high points, I'm going to acknowledge our staff. I'm so glad that we had this opportunity with a larger table so that I could have the key staff sitting next to me. Stephen Kilgore, who is our investment accountant. Steve Pulley is going to be giving the report, and Rob Romatic. But the other folks on the investment team are also in the room. And so y'all just give a wave. I don't want to make the mistake of starting to introduce every one of them and then leaving somebody out. So let me first now turn it over to Steve Kilgore and allow him to give you a drill down on the last quarter's results.
Yes, thank you, Treasurer, and thank you, Chairman, Governor, and others in attendance. You should have a printout with some highlights of where we've been the past quarter of this fiscal year. And the first page has revenue from short-term investments, where it shows short-term investments earned $20.76 million in that's the second quarter of fiscal year 2023. And it's broken out in different investment categories. Next is long-term investment revenue, with that showing a month-by-month trend, also broken out by types of investments, mortgage-backed securities being the largest contributor to investment income over those months. And you can see the trend of increase for each month. Looking back over a longer time frame, this over the last 2.5 years, the next page shows the trend in our portfolio yield as compared to the trend in the 10-year Treasury yield and the 3-month Treasury yield. So as interest rates in the economy have increased, we've been able to reinvest at higher interest rates and improve our yield as well. Down at the bottom is shown the details of those in dollar amounts. The portfolio's net income is defined based on income provided to support operating needs. This includes interest income adjusted for amortization or accretion, and any capital gains or losses on the sales of bonds when that occurs. At the bottom of page 4, these components of income are shown along with the book income rate of return as a percentage yield. Book yield was 1.726% for 2022, which was an increase over 0.748% for 2021. Book returns increased significantly for the 2022 calendar year. Book return for first quarter of fiscal year 2023 was 1.972%. For the second quarter, 2.587%. And so the trend of increase has increased as we've reinvested in a higher interest rate environment. The total return result includes unrealized gains or losses, which are based on estimated price changes, which are mainly due to interest rate changes. Total return was negative 7.9% for 2022 versus negative 1.1% for 2021, as interest rates have increased sharply, lowering bond market values. And then the last slide there shows the portfolio mix and how investments are currently distributed by investment category. This is as of 12/31/2022. We've got mortgage-backed securities, federal treasury and agency bonds, money market funds and demand deposit accounts, commercial paper and other corporate bonds, Arkansas municipal bonds, and Israel bonds. Next, Senior Investment Manager Steve Pulley will have some additional comments, and then Rob.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Steve Pulley, the Senior Investment Officer for the Long-Term Portfolio. Just want to give you a brief overview of the composition of the portfolio. As Steve had mentioned the fact that we gained almost 2.6% for the last quarter. More notable, the fact that the portfolio surpassed $10 billion in asset size. And so I wanted to explain a little bit about where that $10 million and how it's allocated. 25% of our portfolio, roughly $2.5 billion, is managed in liquidity. When you think of liquidity, think of checking accounts, money market. We also have a commercial paper that we purchase, and there's a CD program that we offer funds available to Arkansas banks to participate in each month, and all of that comprises our short-term portfolio. Damon Dortch, who's a member of the team, has done a really good job with that. And right now the rates are in excess of 4%, so they're really, the short-term part of the portfolio is really driving our returns, because if the Fed has hiked 18 months ago, those rates are virtually zero. So we're very thankful to have that, and it's kind of the wind behind our sails when it comes to that. But Damon's done a good job with that. Celeste Gladden, she runs on our investment team, she runs a $400 million money market trust fund, and that is a money market fund that's available to all municipalities throughout the state. If you've got a local governmental entity, they can participate in that, and so those returns are in excess of 4%. So those municipalities, entities that choose to participate in that are getting returns they probably haven't seen in 15 years. And moving on to the longer term side of it, Robert Mamanik and myself, Robert comes to us with over 20 years of private sector experience in Chicago, specifically with mortgage-backed experience in institutional portfolios. I myself have been in Arkansas with a leading investment banking firm, building that for 35 years, originating, trading, and distributing investments throughout the United States to institutional investors. So between Rob and myself, we've got about 60 years of experience that we bring to this capacity and this job, and we have different viewpoints, but it really helps us in making those decisions as we move forward. Looking back at the last quarter, but really the last half, the first part of the fiscal year, as interest rates are rising, the Fed's hiking. We put about over $1.3 billion to work in the marketplace, and the returns on that is over 4.3%. The reason why I mention that is because it's the bonds and the income we're going to be able to hang on to. Regardless, we feel very good if where the portfolio is today, the stability of the portfolio, whether rates move up or down, that our income will not be drastically affected. So with that, I would like to thank Treasurer Lowry for keeping the team intact, and we feel like we've got good momentum moving forward as we head into the rest of this year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob and let him talk a little bit about the rate that we're going to set for the next quarter and some of the economic things we're experiencing right now. Rob?
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, Governor Sanders. Good afternoon, Treasurer Lowry and members of the board, Chairman Walter as well. With your consent, I will be setting the new target rate of book return value for the third quarter of 23. Peak inflation readings are likely behind us, reached in 2022. The easing of supply chain constraints and the gradual normalization across energy and commodity sectors should equate to moderating inflation going forward. However, January's most recent report on CPI coming in at 0.5% month over month, which is the firmest reading in 6 months, and a positive 6.4% year over year, remains significantly above the Federal Reserve Committee's 2% inflation target, which argues a need for higher interest rates for longer. Additionally, the economic environment has come in stronger than expected so far in 2023. U.S. payroll growth topped expectations for the 9th consecutive month, adding 517,000 new jobs in January and averaging 356,000 new positions over the last 3 months. Also in January, the unemployment rate fell to 3.4%, the lowest rate I've observed since joining the workforce more than 25 years ago. And yesterday's retail sales surged to 3% for January, handily beating estimates, suggesting consumer spending has regained momentum. These data points should continue to support interest rate hikes by Federal Reserve members at their next scheduled meetings for March and May, bringing the Fed funds target rate to 5.25%. We therefore are proposing to increase the target rate of book return value for the January through March period from a range of 2.1 to 2.2% to a new range of 2.8 to 2.9%. And I open the floor to your consent.
Mr. Treasurer, would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
I would like to make that in the form of a motion. What he said.
And the motion is that the new target rate of book return is between 2.8 and 2.9?
Yes,
That's correct.
that would be the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? I think we also need a motion for the acceptance of the total report that each of the four men have given us. So can I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report in total?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I'd like to take just a quick break, recess for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll restart just momentarily. Okay? Secretary Wood, I'm calling the meeting back to order. Everybody's having a good time. Okay, we have our, I want to make two motions, our normal quarterly motions that we are required under the law. So the first one is, as chairman of the Board of Finance, I make a motion to the board that no funds are available for deposit into the State Board of Finance Certificate of Deposit Program. May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? As chairman of the Board of Finance, I make a motion, the board direct the treasurer of the state to purchase warrants for the succeeding quarter pursuant to Act 1088 of 2013 and to keep reasonable amounts in demand deposits amounts and money markets during the next quarter for the transaction of the day-to-day activities. May I have a second?
Second.
Any question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next item, we have a presentation on new brokers, and I recognize Steve Pulley, Senior Investment Manager again from the State Treasurer, to make that presentation.
We'd like to make a recommendation to add Stiefel Nicholas to the list. Stiefel bought out Vining Sparks, it used to be a broker of ours, and we've got all the pertinent information on file, so I'd like to make a motion we'd add them to expand our opportunity to do business in the mortgage-backed.
What's the name?
Stiefel Nicholas.
Okay.
Out of
Anybody
Seattle.
have any questions? Okay. Are you, may I have a motion to that effect?
I believe, yes, we'll make a motion to add this gentleman, or Steve Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Any, a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there any other business to come before the board today? Seeing no other business, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.